Hi, everyone. I'm hoping that we're all sort of finishing the film at the same timing. And yeah, it's such a deeply powerful piece of art, and um, it definitely takes some time to absorb that one. Yeah, I'm just yeah, I guess just if you are not fully finished, you could just send a message in the chat. Um, yeah. Anyways, I'm really grateful to welcome Mille Clarkes, the filmmaker and visionary behind this piece. Welcome, Mille.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I'm happy we get to continue our conversation. Um, to start, I guess I would love to just hear like your process and sort of where this piece was birthed from, and maybe your own relationship with climate collapse, particularly as a mother, and just kind of start there.
Sure. Yeah, I guess this film was born from a deep need to communicate sort of the inner landscape that I was carrying around with me to the outer world. I would often find myself sort of ranting in dark corners at social gatherings about the end of the world and not necessarily having a great effect or the desired effect. So I was trying to, I guess, figure out a way to communicate, grief and worry and anxiety in a way that would resonate with people. And so Solastalgia was born. The specific inspiration for it, like I do remember sort of the day the film sort of popped into my head, and it was a day after I'd seen another film, a documentary called Chasing Coral, at a film festival here, where the director Jeff Orlowski was present, and he spoke after the film, and the whole experience was just very moving. I was actually weeping after the film, and the following day, much like the character in the film that I made, I collapsed in the shower. Really, I just sort of broke down with an overwhelming sense of grief. It had turned from sort of ranting and anger and frustration at different systems that aren't working, to just an overwhelming sadness in that moment. And I thought that that was like maybe a powerful way into this conversation that so often it can be very polarizing because of its sort of political weight. I thought maybe reaching people through a conversation that's more personal about grief and our inner connection to the outer everything might be a way. Anyway, that was the attempt. So that, and in relation to being a parent, well, yeah, I mean that just deepens the concern all the more for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I I'm captivated by this piece particularly because of the quality of sort of the dissolving of realities, and I know it's described as like a vision quest. Like Ava, the mother in the piece, is described that she goes on a vision quest, and I wonder like what sparked that. Is that sort of your experience with grief?
Um, I think what sparked that was I was just trying to express, I guess, or articulate a process that I find helpful when I get sort of overridden with a sense of anxiety or worry or anger at our species for our seeming endless sort of greed and short-sightedness. And this is based on advice others have given me, and I'm by far not the first to sort of go through this process, but I do find it very helpful to take a step back from this sort of sense of we need to act and it's too much and I don't know what to do and nobody seems to be listening and half the time I'm not even listening and it just works itself into a frenzy. And then I think, wait a second, no, this is like whatever's happening in our planet right now is part of a story that is much greater and deeper and wider and longer than any individual human, let alone the human species, could even comprehend. We are part of a cycle and a system. We're part of this giant, beautiful story of growth and rebirth and destruction and decomposition, and not to sort of like nullify the need for action, but to sort of alleviate the sense of like overwhelming sort of guilt for the human species. I do like to sort of remember that we're part of a story that's much bigger than us. So that's what that vision quest is about. It's sort of connecting the mundane and the particular lived human experience with like the web of life, which we are all part of, despite the fact that we may be spending a lot of time in, you know, box stores and watching Netflix. And that big web of existence goes on in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I just feel like it's so beautifully captured in, sort of this reality that, this wild kind of primal reality breaking in through through the walls of the piece. And yeah, it really does, it captures that essence. I have a few more questions for you, but I also want to invite all of you who've joined us to, if you have questions for Mille, please feel free to put them in the chat. And you can just put, sort of a short question and also where you're joining us from. And then um, if you would like to share, we can unmute you and you can actually share a little bit about maybe your own process and then ask a question to Mille. So just that invitation to start asking those questions. I'm wondering, like as a mother and someone who, I've processed a lot of grief, um, particularly at the birth of my youngest child. When after he was born, I feel like that moment of collapse really hit me, and just realizing the you know in like bringing that understanding of ecological collapse and sort of all of the like environmental concepts that I understood on a intellectual level. I feel like they just landed deep in my heart after the birth of my youngest. And one of the things that I know I was sharing earlier as well, like one of the things that I realized in sharing this experience with my friends and family and community, um, is just how grief is such a deeply established taboo in our culture. um, and it's people they want to fix it, or they want to be like it's going to be okay. And I found that, yeah, I definitely just in that place of real ecological grief, I know that a lot of people carry it and sort of carry it alone. um, and I feel like this piece invites us into that space of seeing the reflection of our own um, broken heart and just struggle. So I wonder if that's something that you've experienced in, sort of the response that you've gotten from the film.
Um, yeah, I definitely, certainly the people that it seems to have affected react quite viscerally, and they feel, I believe, like they've been heard, or that their inner landscape is being reflected in a way that makes them perhaps feel not so alone. And those are really the responses that have stood out to me. People that have responded well, and those, I guess, that didn't get it or that didn't mean much to haven't bothered to reach out and tell me. So, but yeah, I do. I mean, I know it for a fact, of course, that this is like a very common experience, and I'm just not sure how often that sort of grief and anxiety is really shared. Like, I think it's very humanizing, and I think it's very sameizing, like there is nobody on the planet that goes untouched by a sense of anxiety or grief. And if we can just like sort of draw a line between what's happening in our environment and our personal state of anxiety, and if people can draw that line more clearly, I think it will become apparent to more people that that is a source for their anxiety, whether they have a name for it or they've pinpointed it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also wonder about, like the collective inaction and our like seeming, um, inability to collectively take meaningful action around climate change and biodiversity collapse. And I wonder if some of that is unexpressed grief. Um, if perhaps like the act of not grieving disconnects us from that part of us that truly has the power and the wisdom to take meaningful action in these times.
Yeah, and I work, I live in a small province that is very rural, a very agrarian. It's very easy to be in touch with the natural world here, and even though many of us, and myself included, still cut off from it compared to how most humans have lived. But going to bigger city centers and seeing how the majority of humans are living today. I mean, it's really not surprising that people aren't completely conscious of where that source of anxiety is coming from. I mean, it's been our human biological evolution is tied to the tides and the moon and the weather, but and I don't think that's changed. I think that's very much there, but it's very recent history that we've been physically cut off and distracted by it. And I think there's a real sort of like dissonance, but it's hard to find that source or to identify it when you're so disconnected from just daily patterns. I spent about 4 or 5 visits with an older woman who since passed away, who lived in the western part of Prince Edward Island, and she was 94 when I spent some time with her. I was interviewing her for a piece. Her name is Evelyn Christopher, and she had had a grade 1 education and had left PEI once in her life. And in some ways sort of, didn't know much about the world or was not educated in many realms, but she breathed in, the day. She grew her own garden. She grew all her own food till she was 94, fairly self-sufficient, living on her own. And she just understood, like in this visceral, the way she spoke about nature and the way her eyes lit up and what she knew, the details, like speaking of the plants in her garden and the environment and it was not in a political way. It was just in this, like, this was her world. And it made me realize how few humans that I know, certainly in my little corner of the world, will ever understand the earth the way she does, and there's a real, just a knowledge that can't be articulated that we've really lost. Sorry for the tangent. I just suddenly thought of Evelyn Christopher. She's a wonderful woman, and
Oh no, I love that you brought her in. I Yeah, I had when I was a child, there was an old woman that lived in the woods and her name was Evelyn Harrison. And she was this like really amazing old like woods witch, and anyway, so I really love that.
maybe they're kindred spirits.
Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are on love and grief and how those two are connected.
Love and grief. Um, huh. Boy, I mean, it's a good question. Love is another one of my very passionate topics. I just made a short documentary just asking the question of what love is. And it's hard to know that you love unless there's some pain there, I guess. So I think like pain brings the vitality of, the fear of losing love and love are, so deeply connected, or the fear of someone you love being hurt or in some way, or, so pain and love are so intimately intertwined. And yeah, I mean, there's such a beautiful resonance in that kind of, in that pain for love, which I think solastalgia, the word and the sensibility, really encapsulates too. You know, you don't feel pain for earth unless you feel deep love for it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I John Stephen in the comments just shared that I have read that grief is love with nowhere to go. Hmm. Yeah, I feel like, you know, witnessing my own children grow up and deeply love the earth, really, you know, I'm really blessed, and I live in a you know, magical little green valley, and they play in the maple trees, and they have really deep connection to the earth. And there is this pain to that, you know, knowing that my children will also you know, reach a point, and it's kind of dawning in my daughter who's 8, where she starts to really feel the pain of the brokenness of the earth. Like, we were driving to school the other day, and I don't know what it was, but she was like, just like, it's not going to be okay. Like, how are we ever going to compost all of these cars back into earth? And it was so overwhelming for her. You know, she's like, there's all these cars, and then there's and just witnessing that you know, ecological grief in our children, I feel like is also, you know, so you know, profoundly painful. I wonder about your own son. Like, do you talk to him about environmental collapse, or like, how do you talk to him about that?
yeah, I mean, we certainly try to, but in as sort of gentle a way as possible. Perhaps there's something in me that wants to protect him from that. You know, he's only 5, he's almost 6, so protect him from that anxiety and grief for as long as I can, because I'm sure it's coming. But you know, we do talk to him about overconsumption and wastefulness of human activity, and so when you ask him questions about the environment, he seems like a good brainwashed little environmentalist. But you know, brainwashed for good. So
Yeah, it's a balance for sure. I yeah, I hold that space around my children as well. Just, you know, that the innocence and magic of childhood is so essential, and they will carry the burden of this for their whole lives. And I know for any of you who are with us as well, like, a lot of you are part of the For Our Kids um, network, and so I know that it's something that we are carrying together. You know, raising up these beautiful children to, you know, face this really um, you know, deeply rooted struggle that we're walking into. I wonder if you have any thoughts on the role of storytelling and art in the climate change movement.
yes, I mean, it's not a very refined thought, except that I just feel like we've got to come at this from all angles possible with this, using as many tools. I feel like there's got to be a way to draw people into the excitement and passion of the issue, far away. Well, not, I mean, obviously the political realm is very important, perhaps even more so, but at the same time, people need to be gently prodded or seduced or pushed into it, without knowing. I just, you know, it makes me so deeply moved when, you know, a musician or a stand-up comedian, or, you know, I just feel like artistry in all its forms has to take on these topics, and it certainly is growing. I'm always amazed at the fact that there is any other topic ever being discussed or made art about or written about. Like, it just seems so all encompassing and so pressing that it should be the only thing that we're talking about. But of course, life continues. and it has to continue in all of its beautiful diversity and complexities. But yeah, I'm just very passionate about artists, taking on the issues of climate change and ecological collapse and climate grief, but doing it in the weirdest, wackiest, most beautiful ways they can imagine, because we have to reach people before they even know they're being reached, I think is the thing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Brianne Whyte has a comment, and I wonder, Galen, Brianne, if you'd like to be unmuted and you can share, we can do that. Um,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought there'd have to be a first one, so I thought I'd do it. Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for organizing this. Such an important topic. I'm an organizer with for Kids Toronto. And it's definitely a topic we've been talking about in our groups. But no, I was just sort of reflecting on, like, it's great to be talking to like-minded people who sort of get it. And I feel like for me, I'm not sure how it is for other people, but for me, I sort of have like two pockets in my life. I have like the pocket of people, my climate activist people who get it and who I can share with. And then there's sort of everybody else who doesn't seem to. And unfortunately, the everybody else, like, is my family. They are my friends. And um, yeah, that's very lonely when you kind of, I have a son, I have a 1-year-old boy, and there's a lot of feelings, obviously, that have come up with having him, and a lot of fear of even having him in the first place. That was a big debate to whether even my heart could carry it. But I find it very difficult to not be able to have the conversation with the people who are closest to you, and not for lack of trying, but I think it's been said already, but just that if people haven't really gotten there on their own, it's so difficult to sort of break through, to sort of like, when you're trying to express your grief and then you're like, wait, why aren't you sad? Like, why aren't you freaking out? Why aren't you, like, why does this seem to not affect you? So yeah, it's like it's a difficult thing. And I mean, I think we were just talking about, art and the power of art to kind of break through, just like the film. I think that's um, probably like a very sort of one of those remedies for that sort of breaking in. But it's just sort of my thought contribution for.
Yeah, it's hard, and I don't know. I mean, I would say even this film is probably, we said this in the earlier session, but I mean, I feel it's probably a bit of a preaching to the choir. Is that how that term goes? But I mean, it's made by someone who's already kind of tuned in, and the people who respond to it are those who are already tuned in, and that's good. Like, I want to have a dialogue. I want us to be able to share, but I don't know how you reach those who aren't already sort of listening with one ear a little bit. And it actually, it frustrates me when people have a podium or a voice and they choose not to even reference it. I mean, even obliquely or tongue in cheek, or, if I go see a music show, which hasn't happened lately. But back in the day, I would always think that it doesn't matter if you're just in a crowded little bar somewhere, just doing open mic, and your piece has nothing to do with ecological collapse. You don't have to be heavy-handed about it, but just like some sort of reference to what we're all going through, like, or how the weather, people in the reporting the weather just talk about ridiculous, temperatures without referencing the bigger picture. Just things like that are very, they kind of make you feel crazy a little bit sometimes. Like, am I the only one? I don't know. We have to get all the best ad execs from all the top companies on this, There's been some really great moving commercials lately for different social justice issues, and got to get those minds tuned into this.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Brianne. I really feel you on that too. I also think that, as the climate collapse intensifies and we get further into this crisis, there will be a lot of those people who maybe are still, not uh, accepting the reality, are still in the denial space, who will need to have pathways, will need to have spaces where we can hold grief. So perhaps that's also in strengthening our own capacity to, to be with grief and to hold those community spaces. Like maybe that's a service for what is to come. um, John, would you like to share? I'll unmute you.
There, got it. Am I speaking?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, good. Yes, Mille, I'd like to thank you and express my appreciation for your work in this film. It's very powerful, a bit of film art, as Hannah has said, and I really appreciate it for that, and also for the very important message that's implied in it, implied and stated both, I guess I could say. But with regard to storytelling, I've been following the Dark Mountain Project for about 2 years now, based in the United Kingdom. Millie, are you aware of that?
I'm not. I saw that in the. Wanted to ask, what is that?
Yeah. Well, there's a great long story, but I'll try to say it in like 25 words or less if I can. But it sprang from the same group of artists and activists in the United Kingdom, from which sprang Extinction Rebellion, 10 or 12 years or so ago. And the Dark Mountain Project was a group of people who were mainly writers who, felt that it was very important that the fine and performing arts be addressing the current crises, beginning with environmental and of course the consequences in social and economic and so on, crises that are imminent and developing. And there's some very wonderful work that's been done. They started off with I think 3 years of what they called uncivilization festivals in different locations in the United Kingdom for 3 or 4 years. And since then, for the last 10 years or so, they've been producing, I think, twice yearly anthologies of writings and graphic arts work, come in very nice hardbound books, but also it's possible to just take out a subscription and receive by email selections from these publications every week or so. And there's a lot of very inspiring work, and it's all about what your documentary is about, what your film is about, and how people are responding and what the realities are. And there's a great deal of very, very rich writing and artwork from people all over the world that's published through the Dark Mountain Project. And just for everyone here, if you're interested, I highly recommend it. It is just regarding the importance of storytelling. Of course, I think it's quite clear that it's very important in the weaving and development of culture. And it's very important for us now in this very serious global crisis that's developing. I think we need new cultural ways to deal with this, for people to come together in community. Culture and community kind of pretty much go hand in hand, and I find both of those, being developed and manifest very well, through the Dark Mountain Project and all the wonderful creative people who contribute to that work generally.
Yeah, we've got to put pressure on artists to really turn their creativity to this. Maybe that would be good.
Yeah, Hannah and I have had just started conversation. I know Hannah's been working in this way for some time now, and I've been sort of puttering away at it in my own way. But we've just started some conversation about possible ongoing activity in that way in our community here in the Cowichan Valley. So I think it's quite important for people to come together. And actually, one of the questions that I put in the chat here was just to well, it wasn't a question, but it was an invitation really to everyone here to to say something about what they would like to have as an outcome, follow up from this, from seeing your film and from this conversation? What would people like to have happen or to do as follow-up to this event?
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do feel like there is that sense of, wanting to create more tangible sort of spaces for grief and deeper dives. And, grieving alone is such a different experience than grieving together. And I know that Martin Prachtel is a really incredible writer and teacher, and he speaks a lot about like this sacred ritual of grief and how Indigenous cultures from all over the world have had, grief has been a very integrated, healthy part of community relationships. So I'm gonna also post some resources and some beautiful writings from him and sort of rituals. He has a lot of like grief rituals. Oh, hi Kitty. um, yeah, I'm wondering. I have one more question, and please, everyone, feel really welcome to, if you even if you don't want to share. Like if you don't want to be unmuted and share, you can absolutely just post your questions or comments in the chat box, and I'm happy to read them out as well. I was wondering, Millie, I'm working on a project right now about resilience, and I'm wondering your thoughts around resilience and maybe like where that comes from for you. I know that like as a mother, it's like our children need us to like take radical transformative action to protect the planet, and then they also need us to like show up and be present and joyful and offer them magic. And so I wonder, like, how do you walk with those, both of them?
I don't know if I would describe my path as something I'd want to advise for others. I tend to go in too deep and then retreat too far back the other direction. So I feel like I am actually right now in a bit of I think it's precipitated by COVID and sort of retreating inward and being a little like more insular and sort of self-looking, that I've kind of somehow the anxiety that I was feeling on a consistent basis actually before COVID hit, oddly enough, has been removed. And my, concerns about the collapse of the environment have somehow receded. They seem distant right now, and I need to find a way to become more active and get involved. I think it's my brain, just protecting itself. I think I think like we all do, you sort of go into states of denial, and then you have to work your way back through them to action. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot, which is not something I get to do a lot because I tend to work alone a lot or in small, filmmaking groups, but there's this wonderful group called the River Clyde Pageant here in Prince Edward Island, and it is one of the most magical. I've done little documentaries for them the last few years. It's one of the most magical and heartening, affirming things I've ever witnessed, and it is a community-led moving pageant with all kinds of young people, old people, stilt walkers. It's sort of like a bread and puppet theater type expression, but it's very much grounded in the community, this rural community in Prince Edward Island. And it was originally started as a response to the fact that the river in this town of New Glasgow is, getting shallower and shallower, being silted in, and runoff from industrial farming is affecting it and whatnot. So it's an environmentally themed project, but it is so joyful while mournful. It's so affirming, and it puts young people in touch with these issues in a way that's not so depressing or overwhelming. Anyway, I would like to participate in more actions like that. So, and maybe this is just a plug for the River Clyde pageant, but do go check it out if you can, because it's just an example of, humans coming together in real time, real space to create mournful and joyful art about the environment.
Great. Thanks for sharing. And if anyone else has resources or like something that has been, nourishing for you, just please share that in the chat. And I know that Galen and I are talking about like, sort of future potential ways to continue this conversation and like deepen the community around this. So, yeah, if anyone else has any questions, this would be the moment. Thank you again so much for joining us. And Mille, it's just been so lovely to connect with you and just to hear your beautiful perspectives on, this really challenging time. So thank you for your work. And yeah, to close this evening, I'm gonna share a piece that I wrote. And it was really in like sort of the depths of my own grief after the birth of my baby. And so normally this is more of a performance piece, and there's like a very large gong and two dancers and with wings and masks, and it's more of a sort of theatrical piece. So tonight I'm just sharing the poetry portion of it, and you have to kind of paint the rest of it in. Yeah, and thanks again for everyone just for tuning in and sharing this space. The piece is called I the Storm. I the storm. I gather on the edge of things, and the clouds gather with me. We watch from a ridge top, darkness pooling around our feet, bellies full of grief. Unspilled rivers waiting to fall and flow, answer the call of the deep dreaming ocean. I open my mouth to the sky, and the sky opens to me. A howl tears its way from my throat, a howl that carries the sorrows of the moon for all the wolves who used to know these lands before we came here and took what we wanted and killed what we didn't. I rise, and the wind rises with me. We are the sisters who are done with being silent. For too long, our silence has opened the gates to this madness, tilled the soil in which it grew. For too long, we have harvested emptiness and fear, fed this harvest to our children. These mouths are hungry for stories. These hands are praying for rain. I begin to walk, and the crone walks with me. Our skirts calling up the ocean waves to clamor for the sky. In this great turning, the old one pulls back her cloak. Clouds of crows rise from the arms of the outstretched maples to join in the wild swirling. I dance, and the earth dances with me. Tectonic longing calls hips to sway, mountaintop tumbles into outstretched sea. For every drop wasted, for each well priestess taken from her sacred spring, for every wild place left broken and bleeding, I dance, I dance. For blindness, for fear, for the monster in the mirror, I dance. For every child starved of the language of the land, for every mother aching to hold her baby's hand, I dance, I dance. for unfurling tendrils of green, for seed pods, for butterflies, I dance. I, the storm, I rattle windows, shake the sleeping ones to wake. I am fire, I am pandemic, I am quake. Breath hot with holy fury, whips through canyon and parking lot, calling everything back to dust, back to earth. I let the tears fall, and the rains fall with me. Rivers of raindrops slide across parched skin, gathering in pools that cup and overflow across these lands like memories. Open mouth, tongue outstretched. Panting, I collapse, and worlds collapse with me. There is stillness here, cloaked in fog. Everything we thought we knew, all the stories that seemed so true, now tumble and chase each other down empty alleyways like skins we outgrew. And from my deep pockets, I pull a bundle, and then another. I lay them on the earth, caressing her with soft breezes and a song so old only the mountains remember. I open the bundles one by one, let my breath carry seed like it carries song, out over clear cut and parking lot. Aster, yarrow, goldenrod. My hands reach down and gently push seeds into soft, dark earth. Cedar, oak, weeping willow. The waters are silent at last. The dams are broken. Only sound is breath and wave, the call of wild beings. The salmon move silver in the water, and I know in my bones they will find their way back. Back to the place where life begins again. Song of sea, of salt and cedar. I know the land will welcome their sacred gift once more with tender thanks. I know the healing has begun.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm Galen. I'm popping in here for the very last word. I'm one of the For Our Kids organizers, and it's just been my pleasure to be along for this event and get to see your film, Milla, and get to hear that poem, Hannah. So thanks for all that. It's my job to let you all know about the For Our Kids network and what we do. I'm really glad that we're coming together for this kind of event. We haven't done any events specifically on climate grief before. We're focused on action, climate action. And I think that those things go hand in hand. Like one, you can't have one without the other. It's just kind of how I see it. Of course, I suppose you can. But I invite everyone, if you're not already involved and active, come and check us out. We're parents and grandparents across Canada. We have about 21 groups, I think, now. We've only been going for a year. And we're here to support the movement that already exists. There's a movement of parents and grandparents across the world, people like me who are concerned about their kids' future and are determined to do something about it. And so that's what we're doing. If you see our website, you'll see lots of really amazing stories. A couple team leaders are on here today, and that's really awesome to see. I would like to see more of us in this network, just recognizing that in addition to doing really badass work and putting pressure on governments, we're also carrying this grief with us, and just recognizing that as we go along. And so yeah, I'm so appreciative of this event and of your film, Mille. So I'm going to post a link here. If you don't already know about For Our Kids, you can check that out. We will post this. We'll probably just post one of the 2 events that we did tonight to YouTube in the next couple of days, so you can check it out. If you want to share it with people, you can share it from there. And I think that's all I've got to say. Thanks again, Mille and Hannah. Hannah, do you have any last words you want to throw in?
Just my gratitude. It's really lovely to be together like this, even when we're apart. And yeah, Mille, just deep gratitude for your work. And the arts collective that I work with, we're called Mother Rising Collective, and we're part of the For Our Kids network. And yeah, we've mostly our most recent campaign is an art project around the southern resident orcas, and really like working around with grief around extinction. And that I just posted a link to our website, and so yeah, just that you can find us there. And yeah, just gratitude. Thanks everybody. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you so much. Bye all.